We are back with part 2 of this amazing conversation with Mike Verret. And in this episode, we really dive into the strategies for turning your presentation into a conversation. At one point, Mike even gets vulnerable to share the terror of his first pitch, but how the whole experience changed with just a single question. And he's kind enough to show you how to do the same. And as a bonus, I even got Mike to share the ideal elevator pitch and give you his top advice for mastering yours. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome to Popup Advice, the place where masters of entrepreneurship, leadership, and e-commerce reveal their secret tips and tricks for becoming the top dogs in their field. These candid conversations will give you exclusive strategies that turn your good idea into a great success. Let's dive in. One thing I love about your messaging is it's all based on telling a story that the audience is going to connect with, the audience actually wants to read. And like you said, I mean, they are the ones that actually capture the value and really determine, right? You can have a great product, but if nobody's interested in it, what's the actual value of it? Mm-hmm. I think there's so much there. And in saying all this about pitch, like, where, say if someone was doing this in person, like you said, like the elevator conversation, what percent of value or I guess impact does the actual delivery hold on the pitch?
Well, the first thing to understand is that question, what do you do? They're asking that in several places, right? It's not just one-to-one. So you want to build consistency by saying the same thing like we are now. Your homepage, your LinkedIn profile, those are all opportunities to tell your whole story, if you will, right? So thinking about answering that question becomes daunting because you know everything. But delivering it has less to do with your skills presenting and more to do with if the audience is in one of two states, on or off. Those are the only two choices. They're paying attention or they're not. They're engaged in what you're saying and looking at you, or they're doing something on their phone or taking notes or doing something else. Your thinking is what if I'm wearing the wrong tie? What if the slides don't work? What if I trip over what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. They're not thinking that. But your ability to predict the questions that they would ask means you're just sort of answering questions in your mind of what you do. It's just in the right order. So you want to get to your comfort zone, what you've built, how it works, the if you engage with me, this is what happens kind of stuff, of course, because that's exactly what you understand. And most pitches, you'll hear people describe their services in great detail because they know them inside and out. The truth is, if you're saying what's comfortable for you in the way that they need to hear it, it turns it into a conversation. And I know very few people who have a hard time having a conversation. It's a presentation that they have a hard time with.
Yeah.
Right? How do you get from presentation to conversation? In real life, it could be crazy weather we're having, huh? By the way, my name's Mike. That forms a connection in the real world, but that is how we get to a conversation, right? So I'll give you an example of how I had to get to conversation when I was terrified of my presentation head. Me versus 50 people in front of me. I was working at Hasbro Toys. And it was the first time working there that I had to present for a quarterly review to the C-suite and all of the country managers and stuff. I'm petrified. And I know how to present, but that was a new audience. The CEO of a Fortune 500 company is my audience now. That was different for me. First thing I did, show of hands, how many people were terrified the first time they had to present to this front table? Every hand in the room went up, including the CEO. But what I saw was acceptance, connection. It created that moment of, I saw all the hands go up, all the heads nodding, you're not on your own. I felt like part of the club. My brain switched from me versus them to us. Mm-hmm. That's what connection does, right?
Yeah.
So now thinking about that from a business pitch perspective, if you're pitching your new business to an investor, right? They've heard a lot of pitches. You need to stand out. how do you connect them to your idea based on that motivation, getting to that need state first? Very rarely are other people doing that in that space. They're saying, my name is this, my business is this, we do this, here's how we operate, here's the money we're asking for. It doesn't leave as much of an impression. You got to remember, these people hear pitches all the time. If they hear 50 in a day, they're going to remember maybe 3 of them that stood out to them. So being part of that 3 is the goal. And if you can create that connection first and move it to sort of a conversational feel in your mind, there really is, and you're saying the right thing that they need to, you're reading the book in the right order of pages, you don't have the same effect. You communicate like you normally do.
Yeah. Would you say that that kind of organic, natural feel, as you're saying, like presentation to conversation, is a way that you can stand out when giving a pitch? Is that the, what's the opposite of the norm? Like, is that rare?
The exception to the rule?
Yes. Is that the exception to the rule? Perfect.
I think it's the exception to what almost happens as like an automatic reaction or involuntary response rule, meaning everybody wants to get to the details, so they're all doing the same thing to get there. Yeah. And the differentiator for them versus a competitor could be in those details. But if I get a sniff that if you're a CRM company, right? You built a CRM platform. I've seen a lot of CRM platforms. So you can't come in and say, we're a CRM platform, but what makes us different? And then show me one feature in your calendar functionality. It's not going to move the needle enough, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that we're all prone to, because we want to get to the ones and zeros, the math of what we built. But that's the science of what you've created. You think that way. The rest of your audience thinks in stories, in narratives. And 100% of what you do is not important to them. Your product becomes important to them based on how they're reading the first 4 pages of your book.
Is there anything in a pitch that makes you cringe? Like, if you see it, you just kind of roll your eyes and think, oh my goodness.
I have 2 versions that I see every single day consistently. Mm. The first is, I call it the business card approach. Hi, my company is, we are literally what they are. We help these people by doing A, B, C, D, and E services. Give us a call. Sounds like they just read their business card to me.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more information than a business card, but you get the idea. Then there's the Story Brands ones. Now, Story Brand is an incredible program. And if followed through, meaning applied the right way and not just understood, comprehended, it could be effective. The people who just take the Story Brand, I call it Story Brand Mad Libs.
Okay.
They take the front end of like the starting point of the Story Brand platform is, I help audience A going through challenge B get over hurdle C to reach goal D by providing service E that allows them to benefit F and whatever the last thing is. And they just fill in the letters. And you go on LinkedIn, you'll see them all the time. Read right under their name. It starts with I help, and I guarantee you it's a run-on sentence.
Really? Wow. I'm going to have to do some investigation. I'm super curious. I'm like, do I have that?
Well, it's like an elevator pitch is based not on the origin of the elevator pitch actually comes from Otis Elevators, where he was demonstrating the braking capacity of an elevator. He was the first to introduce a braking system, not only the first to introduce the elevator. And the way he did it was to drop it from the top floor of a 30-floor building, and the brakes kicked in and stopped it at the first floor. That's the origin. We've adopted it to be literally, what do you say to somebody if you're on an elevator with them? Mm-hmm. So the 10-second approach is, I'm in public relations, right? What else do I need to know at that point? I know what PR is. Or the I help version also lasts 10 to 15 seconds, but you've said it all right away. Like, what do you say next? What do you do? Like, that's a lot to process in 15 seconds. My elevator is 8 floors. And those floors are based on exactly what we've been talking about: connect, relate, solve, show them a process for how you solve it, then introduce your services, then benefits, then prove it, validation, case studies, testimonials, and then a call to action. What you're writing against at that point, or speaking to at that point, is the order of questions somebody would ask to elicit information from you about what you do. Again, it starts with the question, what do you do? But then it should sound something like this, right? So what do you do? Oh, that's interesting. What do you mean by that? Tell me more about it. Okay, so how do you help those people? Well, how does that solution work? And what happens in that process? What do they get? How are they better off? What's the benefit of your process? Can you prove it works? Have you worked with anyone else I could talk to? Do you have case studies I could look at? Yeah, you know what? Let's schedule the next call. I think I'm interested. Let's see how it goes. Like, that's normally what we would want to ask. But we ask and then we say, tell me more, and they jump to floor 5.
Right.
So there is actually, a rationality for how we think. And most of what I do is grounded in human nature, logic, and common sense. It's how are we feeling in that moment? The ability to walk in someone's shoes in that moment tells you more than quantitative and qualitative research are ever going to tell you.
Yeah, it's so true. I think it's that eagerness, like you said, to get to our value, because also, I mean, it's where our ego rests, and being able to say, like, oh, I'm the hero, like I have the solution. That feeds, as you're saying, like that human nature part of us is validation. And so I can see why people kind of jump at the bit when the opportunity is presented. And I've seen that as well, just kind of an overall, not desperation, but extensive need to to talk about themselves and what they do. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I personally,
it's a comfort zone. It's what you're comfortable with, The temptation is great, but the phenomenon is always because it's you, because it's your business. You built that business based on what you created, and you want to tell people the brilliance of it and how it works. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
It's not even ego. It's like passion for solving a problem for people.
Yeah.
How do you get over that hump and get them, you need to get them to that point on the road. You can't start with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very true.
Think about, this is a kind of a funny example of passion and where it leads, but I know a lot of people who have written books, right? And I'm sure you do too. And let's say it's a business consultant has written a book. That is their passion for sharing, and they took on this challenge of writing a book. So where do you think they're going to announce it on their website?
Maybe homepage?
Right at the top of the homepage. Check out my book. Here's the bad news for that business consultant. Unless you're Danielle Steele or Stephen King, I don't care. You're not an author in my mind. Mm. But if you move that book down to the bottom after I've read about how get my attention, relate to my problem, solve it, show me how you solve it, show me how I'm better off, now I want to read that book.
Wow.
Well, our passion for what we do guides us a lot, and especially if it's entrepreneurs, new businesses, new ideas, are passion-based to a degree,
Very, very true. I love that example. I've actually written a book, and now I'm like, where should I put it? That is terrific, though. I agree. I mean, especially if your identity is not known for a specific thing, you can't just go in and say, I find there's this phenomenon right now of people who, I don't know, I'm big into the fitness world, and there's a lot of coaches out there with a lot of promise of what they can do. And I hate to say it, but I sit there, and if I don't see it like in practice in their own lives, and I feel like, oh, well, if you can't do like 150 push-ups, don't promise that you can get me there, So that is a very interesting concept. I love it.
It's an amazing experience. I've been outside for all of the things going on around here, and it's always been just sort of an interesting output of it all, right? Like, how do you know everything and tell the right story to people who don't know everything is the problem we all run into.
Exactly. And I guess to wrap up here, what would be one piece of advice for somebody crafting their pitch?
The most important thing to think about is the difference between motivation and need state. And connecting to that motivation, that's why they're looking for something. If you're talking to the need state, it's what they're looking for. So the question for them, what do you do? It's not, I sell this. It's, I deal with this thing that you're going through, right? Yeah. How do you get people attached to why they're looking? First, relate to it by saying, here's how you're feeling, and solving it in a sentence. If you could do those three things, that's going to be a good start.
That is terrific. Thank you so much, Mike. For folks wanting to connect with you, which I'm sure they will after this conversation, what's the best way for them to get in touch and hear more about what you do?
Go directly to LinkedIn is the best opportunity. As far as I can tell, I'm the only Mike Verret who has a cartoon picture with his thumb up like this. Right. So just find me on LinkedIn, connect, send me a message, and all I sell is free 30-minute phone calls. I'm happy to talk to anybody about their business, and I just promise I won't be boring. It's my own.
Yeah, I think this podcast is evidence of that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I honestly do love to talk about what I do, and glad I could be a part of your program.